Hi everybody, welcome to confirmation class this week. This week a really difficult person to talk about from Scripture. It's Judas. He's such a difficult person because we're not really sure of what his motivations are. Of course we know that he betrays Jesus. He gives Jesus up to the authorities so that Jesus ultimately can be crucified. And there's our big problem. We don't know what Judas's motivation is. The sum of 30 pieces of silver wasn't a whole lot of money to be betraying somebody who you at one time may have believed to be the Messiah. So we're not sure if Judas may have been disappointed in who Jesus was. That Judas was expecting that Jesus was going to be some big military leader and that he didn't fulfill Judas's hopes and dreams. And so Judas turned on him in that way. We're not sure if maybe even Jesus and Judas had an arrangement where Jesus had to be taken in by the authorities. After all, it was part of God's plan that Jesus be crucified, that Jesus die on the cross and be buried and rise again. And Judas plays a critical role in this. So let's take a look at Judas, and then I'll ask you some questions in a little bit. So that's Judas. It's interesting to think about this story. A lot of people view this as Judas being just a pawn in God's game, that Judas was forced, essentially, to betray Jesus, and therefore to receive condemnation from the whole world. After all, nobody names their child Judas anymore, and there is a heavy metal band named Judas Priest who took that name because of the notoriety. But knowing how God works, that he's going to make his plans fulfilled regardless of whether or not we get in the way, I think that Judas may have just been caught up in what was going on and had his own ideas of how things should have been. God would have fulfilled his plan for Christ's crucifixion with or without Judas. But that leads us to a couple of questions. First of all, I think Judas may have been really confused about what God's plan was. So, have you ever had a time in your life when your faith has been confusing? Have you wondered what God's plan was for you and how you were supposed to follow through with that? Secondly, I want you to share a time when you were confused or with something that was in the Bible. Or you can even share something in the Bible that confuses you. It's good to say that. Not everybody understands everything that's going on in Scripture, and sometimes we have to take time to examine it. Sometimes it takes us years to really understand what Scripture is saying. And we have to look at the source and understand that sometimes there are some conflicting messages that come. Where is Christ speaking in Scripture? And what is the message that we are really trying to hear about our salvation? Finally, I want you to write a prayer and pray it with your folks. All right, that's confirmation for this week. I'll see you next week. Go Seahawks.
Judas, must you betray me with a kiss?